Good evening. Welcome to StoriesRoc. Things that go bump in the night and other tales that terrify us. Thank you so much for coming. I'm Leah Ruckberg, I'm a producer of StoriesRoc, and I'm also your host this evening. I want to thank my husband David for being our videographer. And if you would like to see this show, it will be up on YouTube, and if you want to see any of our past shows, you can also go back and take a look at some of those. Melissa Pheterson is a marketing director by day and a journalist by night. She gets plenty of good creative material from her children, Sam, an aspiring movie critic, and Abby, who wants to be a doctor, and she carries Band-Aids around to dispense when needed. A little known fact, she has had to extract 6 wisdom teeth. And so I think that the 2 extra must mean that she's a very wise woman, don't you? Melissa will read Leapin Lizard.
That's good? All right, Leapin Lizard. As Hurricane Irma tore up their trees and cut their power, my brother's family was celebrating my nephew's birthday. The family picture they shared on Facebook had the caption, "Hurricane Air, don't care," which summarizes pretty well the statewide attitude toward even the most gut-wrenching, vicious, howling storms. I grew up in Florida and welcomed Hurricane Andrew back in '92 with open arms, actually with arms tucked into my sleeping bag because we had to sleep in the hallway, because Hurricane Andrew had kindly canceled my appointment at the orthodontist. I remained brave in the face of palmetto bugs the size of a silver dollar, of alligators sunbathing in my backyard, having slipped through drainage pipes in the neighborhood canal. And I didn't fear the mysterious and random sea lice that burrowed and bit under my swimsuit each time I swam in the Atlantic Ocean, leaving a kind of predatory chicken pox. None of these struck fear in my heart. Bugs were slow, alligators lumbered and lazed, and pest control was only a call away. And sea lice was a necessary evil because that meant I had been to the beach and could lick the salt water from my hair, then get a grilled cheese and chocolate milk across the street at Howard Johnson's. There was just one thing from my childhood that made my skin crawl. Lizards. Slimy, scaly, sneaky lizards, little shrunken dinosaurs that could scramble over you in the shower without even a warning, whipping their detachable tails before you even had a chance to scream, then warping, like Super Mario, into another level of the house, vanishing just until I convinced myself that they had repaired to the Everglades. I shrank when I saw them crawling on the ceiling, slipping under my door, screeching to a halt at the edge of the pool. I startled when I looked out my window and caught their red throat flaring like a spot of blood. I tried not to let my guard down, mainly by requesting that my parents make a sweep of my room every night. My mom's here, she can vouch for that. I called this ritual the lizard check. It was very important. I couldn't even dodge them in the car. One day I rode with my mom and my brother Mark to his basketball practice. He was riding shotgun. Of course, it was perfectly fair that my brother always got the passenger seat. After all, he reminded/threatened me, he got car sick in the back, and he wouldn't want to suddenly lurch forward and throw up in my lap. I had just settled into the back seat when, with perfect timing, a hitchhiking lizard bounded through the door just as it slammed. Head poking inside, tail swishing outside, and pinned at the middle, dying slowly as I screamed the entire ride. This is where all my therapy comes from. Without even turning around, my mom had said, "Melissa, you're so much bigger than that tiny little lizard." And my sweet little brother whipped his head around and said, "Yeah, Melissa, cut the shit." By this time, the lizard and I had both grown weak and pale. The next day, my brother told his friends the story of my meltdown next to a suffocating lizard, and it made the rounds in my neighborhood. Now, the boys who lived on my block were not outdoorsy types themselves. They were budding programmers and software engineers. At least one of them is now a self-made millionaire. One day, I received homework to alphabetize my spelling words, and my neighbors Alex and Michael, who often came over to enjoy my mother's cooking, typed some commands into our Apple IIc desktop, and lo and behold, the words jumped into sequence. Altitude to zenith. My mother was not thrilled about this stroke of genius, no pun intended, and encouraged us to play outside, taking my brother with us. It wasn't long before a lizard with beady eyes darted into our path, its red throat thrust out like a fan against the heat. I screamed. "Did you know," Alex asked Mark, "that if you grab a lizard by its tail, the tail will snap off and move in your hand?" "Creepy," I said. "Cool," said my brother. "Come on, Melissa," said Michael. "Show that phobia who's boss, or at least amuse me a little. I just finished your homework." "I wouldn't steal someone's tail," I said. "It grows back," they all screamed at me. I began to shrink, literally, tightening, tensing, and hunching so just maybe they'd forget I was there. "Mark will do it, right, Mark?" Alex said. Then to me he hissed, "Your baby brother is braver than you. Do it. Conquer your fears." "I can't," I said. "I'll faint. I might even die." The boys looked at each other. "Fine," said Michael. "We'll do it, but you have to watch us." And Alex got behind me before I could bolt. The other two chased the lizard, by this time a different one, skittering across the asphalt. My brother knelt and extended his palm so the lizard trustingly hopped onto his hand, a calloused little hill on its nature walk. I actually felt sorry for the creature until he scurried down the ridge back to freedom. Mark quickly pressed his finger to his thumb, easily snapping off the tail. It was only slightly thicker than dental floss. "Check this out," said Mark. "It's moving." And despite myself, I looked. In his palm, the tail thrashed and whipped as though attached to a ghost lizard. And I imagine that is what the lizard had become. It hadn't merely escaped, it had transcended its physical helplessness to become something scarier, even more menacing. A ghost lizard wouldn't appear in even the best lizard check. One night when my parents went out to dinner, my grandparents tucked us into bed. My grandmother was not quite as exhaustive as my mother in her lizard checks, so I recruited Mark. In exchange, I checked under his bed for monsters, a fear that was completely unfounded. The cold little feet of a monster had never swept our feet. A red flame of monster throat had never startled us from our homework. We checked the carpet, the corners, the walls, the ceiling, and then repeated the process in my closet and the bathroom. Spotting a lizard on the ceiling was the worst. How would I know it wouldn't fall into my hair? Satisfied that my room was lizard-free, I fell asleep. When I heard my parents come home, I opened up one eye and saw a dinosaur reared above me, and I wasn't dreaming. In the darkness, its silhouette rose with sinister tension above the hem of my blanket. Its long neck and crested head curved toward the ceiling, as though it were scanning the horizon for food. For me! I threw off the covers and screamed. The dinosaur dove inside my sheets. My mother ran in, saying, "What's wrong? You'll wake up your brother." My tongue hacked through the waves of revulsion in my mouth. "Lizard! Lizard!" "Oh, honestly, Melissa," my mother sighed, "I keep telling you, lizards are afraid of you." "I know, but I woke up and it looked like a giant dinosaur about to eat me, and now it's in my bed. You have to strip my bed." "Melissa, that's ridiculous. I can't sleep with a lizard. Strip my bed." She complied, but had a short fuse the next day. Now that I'm a mom, I get why. When I left Florida for New York, I eased the pain of leaving the tropics by reminding myself all the things I wouldn't miss. Furious thunder showers, hair-frizzing humidity, alligators lying belly up in my backyard. But most of all, those lizards. To this day, I crush stink bugs with my bare hands and douse cockroaches with hairspray. I spare the lives of spiders and regard them as temporary artists in residence. Once at my office, a restored mansion that always had to look impeccable, I was the only one brave enough to scoop a hairy centipede off the Persian rug and into a plastic cup, as everyone else cowered in the corner. It was no big deal. When I took my kids to Florida for the first time, I reasoned that my fear of lizards would be crushed by the mightiness of motherhood. After all, if they threatened my children, I'd have to bare my claws and chase them off. And if they got really fresh, I'd maybe even stomp one under my flip-flop. How did this play out? At the beach, my kids braved ocean waves that knocked them down and sprayed foam into their eyes. They sat through a turbulent stretch of our flight without even glancing up from their iPad. But when a scaly, shrunken dinosaur leapt across my daughter's slippery foot as she rinsed off sand from the beach, well, you should have heard our screams.